Jeff, take it away.
All right, hello. Thank you for attending. Livestock watering systems. Next slide, please. Livestock watering systems. Drinking water is a crucial nutritional component and a powerful tool for controlling where animals graze. New kinds of plastic pipe and feedings have increased the options for watering livestock on pasture. Water can be moved in many ways, such as with solar energy, wind, and gravity. However, electric power is often the most reliable and the cheapest option. The picture on the slide is of two sheep getting some clean water in the trough. Emmett or any of the other staff, would you like to share about daily drinking requirements?
Sure. Sizing your watering system to the type, number, size, and use of your livestock is really critical to making sure that you have healthy animals and animals that are respecting fences and other boundaries and not in search of water. It can vary quite a bit depending on the climate, time of the year, and the size of the animal, but here are some sort of general requirements for livestock watering. Beef cattle, that's anywhere from 6 to 18 gallons a day. Dairy cows, 10 to 30. Sheep and goats, 1 to 4 gallons, and horses, 8 to 12. Lactating animals are probably going to be using more water, and smaller or younger animals generally consume less water per day.
All right, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, this is Bill. I just two thoughts. I want to, but both what Jeff and you said, Emmett, is as far as controlling your animals. Yeah, if you don't provide them a water source, you might think your animal's a trouble causer when in fact it's not. It's just searching for water because it's thirsty. And so to just be a good neighbor and get along with your friends and give yourself a lot less headaches by providing a good water supply, clean water supply, you'll probably find your animals are going to cause you less problems, less challenges with the fencing and escaping. And second, if you are interested in beyond your livestock, just interested in attracting wildlife and enjoy wildlife, providing a good clean water source also is really cool, because a lot of wildlife will be coming in and utilizing and sharing that along with your livestock. So it just adds that dimension too, so you can enjoy a little bit of nature at the same time your livestock are healthy and happy.
Excellent, thank you, Bill. Next slide, please. Animals need drinking water to survive, obviously. Location and availability of water greatly influences where animals graze, where they rest, where their manure and urine are deposited. Two rules fit almost all grazing animals. When the water source is more than 900 feet from the grazing area, the grazing animals will drink as a group instead of as individuals. The law of least effort or need by grazing animals to expend as little energy as possible. In the picture in the top right-hand corner, we have beef cattle drinking from a very large water tank. The other bottom picture to the right is of a cow drinking from a portable water trough that is insulated. The bottom picture, oh wait, I'm sorry, I got that confused. The picture in the bottom left is of cattle drinking from a solar pump from an insulated tank. The other bottom picture to the right is of a cow drinking from a portable water trough, meaning they probably don't have a source and the water is on the truck and they bring it to them. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
There are some general formulas that can be applied to determining the size and shape of the water system that is best suited to your livestock, and that will depend on, again, what type of animals you have, how many are going to be using the source, what age and height. You generally want to leave, enough room that a certain percentage of the animals can come down and water at the same time. and enough space that they're comfortable to do that without cramming each other in there. That's something that farm planners at Skagit Conservation District can help design a system that works well for you.
All right, thank you, Emmett. Next slide, please. Or any more comments? Okay. Water source hazards. It is important to provide livestock with ample access to clean drinking water and prevent excessive contamination of drinking facilities with manure and other environmental contaminants. Providing clean water and maintaining a clean watering facility is important to encouraging adequate water consumption and preventing contamination. Water quality is one of the most important factors affecting water intake, which in turn can affect herd health and animal productivity, such as milk production. Water quality is reduced when it contains either biological or inorganic contaminants. One of the main biological contaminants found in water provided to livestock is manure. Manure may contain bacteria, or what is enteric? Must be a form of bacteria. When it contaminates drinking water, water disease can easily spread between animals drinking from the same water source. Inorganic contaminants such as sulfates, which occur naturally in many water sources, also decrease water quality and can lead to nutritional disorders. Previous research has shown that cattle do not like bad smelling water and, not surprisingly, find it unpalatable. Additionally, properly sanitizing water facilities in between animal groups can help prevent disease spread between herds or individuals. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, that's one of the, we want to limit livestock access to open water bodies, whether that be a stream or a pond, because we want to limit their opportunity to consume bacteria and other pathogens that are coming down into that water source, and limit their ability to input manure into the system and degrade the water quality there as well.
Yeah. This is Bill. I want to just follow up a little bit. Yeah, the Enterococcus E. coli, and that's just a common term we hear along with fecal coliform. Usually we hear it around protecting, in the Skagit, around protecting our shellfish beds and water quality and or for human health. But when in fact our focus here on this slide, what is actually the health of your animals. That it's very important to have a good, healthy animal whose gut is working right, not fighting disease and things like that. And so, but yeah, those are some common terms, but we always don't think about it as how it can affect those livestock we're raising, to keep them healthy and robust as much as possible, for whether it's cattle you're raising for beef, or it might be horses that you want to have healthy or look beautiful for show horse. But anyhow, yeah, the focus of this is about the animals right now.
Thank you, Bill. Next slide, please. Sources of water. Two main sources are underground, like well water, and surface water, like ponds, rivers, and creeks. Well water with an electric pump is often the most flexible and cheapest way to supply water. Ponds and streams can be used, but environmental issues and the capacity to move water from the source to distant pastures needs to be considered. Would anybody like to comment? Or Emmett, did you want to talk about the solar powered pump layout a little bit? Just some main themes or facts.
Yeah, if you don't have access to a well, or don't have the ability to drill one, or the cost is super prohibitive, siphoning water from a standing water source into a trough may be an option. You might be saying, well, why would we need to do that if you have a pond or a stream? But really, eliminating livestock access to those water bodies is not just about the quality of the water there. It's also about the quality of the bank and preventing erosion and providing opportunities for habitat for wildlife, and filtering opportunities through plants and vegetation. So having a trough up, off, away from the stream is both good for water quality, and it can help you to distribute your livestock better to help you better manage your pasture and your grazing. We've helped producers with a number of different solar powered pumps. And basically you have a small solar panel that provides electricity to a battery with a couple signals to the pump, and then a pump, very small pump, half horse or 1 horse, something like that, usually can be floating in the water, and it can be designed to pump water through a pipe into either a reservoir or into a tank directly, and is often controlled by a float switch so that you don't pump when you don't need to and you don't overflow the tank and create mud and issues there. Price can range quite a bit depending on how many animals you're trying to design the system for and how far you're trying to go with the pump. On one end of the spectrum, we did a project with a larger cattle operation, and it cost about $26,000. On the smaller end of the spectrum, a few $1,000s is certainly possible for some of the smaller systems. Generally, the pump, solar panel, and battery is going to be your most expensive part, and that's usually in the range of $3,000 to $5,000 for that whole setup. And then pipe and trough is sort of the questionable part, because that will depend on how far you're trying to go in your geography and all of that.
So yeah, excellent, Emmett. And to follow up, those costs, some sound a little high, or even a couple thousand to some, but it's compared to the cost of digging a well. If you don't have one in the proximity, it's pretty small. It's not a big, huge cost. Also, definitely follow up on that reservoir is an important aspect. Sometimes that increases the cost, but if you have a low to recharge water supply, a low flowing stream, or whatever, when it's most important in the summer, being able to pump at a low rate throughout the evening, daytime, and keeping the reservoir full is definitely a key to making sure water is available when the animals need it. Because if they come and drink a bunch and you only are trying to keep a trough full, you may not be able to keep up. Where if you're feeding the reservoir and then utilizing that, especially if gravity can go down to a switch below, that's a good way to go. So I think and one thing, and we'll show it later, I believe, in alternative practices, but we talked about underground and surface ponds, rivers, and creeks. Well, also one of the main practices that we've been doing the recent years is roof water collection runoff that then can go to your livestock. And I think we'll show that as a practice later, but it's not on this slide, but anytime you can capture rainwater and collect that, that's also a good source of water that we should capitalize on in the future.
Excellent input. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk about some of the sources of water. Wells. Wells are the most commonly utilized water source for livestock watering systems. The advantages. It might already be existing on your site. A lot of times there's a well on a site already. Can be drilled where most convenient on the site, near power supply if possible. Wells are low maintenance and generally reliable once drilled and yield is known, knowing how much water you can get. Generally a good default when no other reliable sources on the site can be utilized. Disadvantages. Gambling on the yield when drilling a new well. It can be expensive, or it is expensive. Occasionally, wells dry up and you could have problems. Groundwater table is dropping in areas of heavy use, meaning there could be other farmers or maybe a lot of people have a lot of wells and everybody's it just drops and you can't use your well. Utilizing a homeowner's existing well. I don't think you can do that. That's why it's a disadvantage. Okay. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
Wells are a unique thing to think about in our area because of the somewhat recent Hearst decision with the Washington State Supreme Court. There are limits to utilizing groundwater from a well where they might affect in-stream flow during the summer and have a negative effect on fish and other aquatic life. In our area specifically, Skagit River watershed, any areas that drain to the Skagit River, a new well cannot be drilled here. So that includes any of those permit exempt wells for residential use, but also new wells that aren't associated with a water right. And in areas that drain to the Samish River, that rule is not in place, so new wells can continue to go on consistent with existing state law there.
Is there any difference between residential and agricultural uses?
Yeah, so residential uses as defined as a permit exempt well, so this is one that's not associated with a water right, have historically been granted to people for use in their residence. And the limitations on those are withdrawal of 5,000 or fewer gallons of water a day. They are allowed to be used for livestock watering, but you're not allowed to irrigate more than half an acre or irrigate for commercial purposes. So that might be your lawn or your little garden box for yourself, but not meant to be used for growing crops or anything. In agricultural use, you would need to have a water right and something that you can prove your use of that water, whether that's through a flow meter or a power record or something like that, consistent with that right that is tied to the land.
And Emmett, who should, but since we're not the experts in wells, who should a landowner contact just to confirm any questions they may have or ability to, if they were considering a well? Would that be the Department of Health or Department of Ecology, or who should a landowner talk to?
In Washington State, Department of Ecology manages water rights and wells, so they would be the people to ask. Although it may be valuable to also check in with your local county because there might be specific circumstances, such as here in Skagit County, where you have different rules depending on which part of the county you live in.
Thank you.
A couple of those disadvantages there are really big things to think about too. The cost can be really expensive. You know, in our area, we have a lot of groundwater, generally speaking. So you may need to go, you know, 40 to 100 feet deep. In other places, Eastern Washington and other parts of the country, you may need to go thousands of feet. And it's not always clear where that groundwater table is. I worked on one site where they had pocketed and perched aquifers. And while there was water seeping out of the ground in one area, just a few feet away where they chose to drill the well, they had to end up going over 300 feet down to find a reliable source of water. So you just really never know exactly where you're going to hit an area that's going to have a reliable yield.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. Ponds or existing ponds. Ponds are rarely used as water sources, but can be very reliable and more economical than installing a new well. Advantages: they're less expensive and risky than spring development or stream pickups. Rarely will a reservoir be needed because the pond provides storage to meet the peak demand. Large change in grade over a short distance at embankment is ideal for a hydraulic ram pump on remote sites. Disadvantages of ponds: may require more maintenance than a well. Landowner needs to maintain the dam if the embankment or spillway blows out. The water source will be gone. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
Check with your local county staff if you're considering building a pond or digging a pond. You will likely get into a permit requirement situation for excavating below a certain level or moving a certain amount of material. Having a pond and utilizing pond water also requires a water right for commercial settings for livestock use. So just because you have a pond doesn't mean that you can use that for your intended purpose. So you'd check in with the Department of Ecology again about water rights and with your county staff.
Yeah, to follow up on that too, if there's a stream flowing through your property, you no longer can just put a dam or a weir to control that flow to back up the pond, because it would have to be, most likely it's categorized as a stream, not a ditch. But again, once again, you'd want to check with the county and possibly Fish and Wildlife, any of those agencies, because but if they're old remaining ponds that have been used for livestock, follow the advice Emmett gave. But creating new ones is not something we see very often anymore this day and age.
Well, if you watch Yellowstone, though, John Dutton did it on his property in Montana. Anyway, I'm just saying that that's good that you put that in there, because if they were to watch Yellowstone, they might think that they can do that kind of stuff, and you can't.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's always good to check locally, because there's different rules in different places.
And that's a TV show. So thank you. Next slide, please. So following ponds, and ponds being just mostly, a lot of times they're just a body of water just sitting there with not much either flow or movement, thought it would be important to talk about some pathogens that contaminate water sources and affect livestock. Common waterborne pathogens that can affect livestock. Okay, now these words are hard, but I can give you the definitions of them. And if anybody else can pronounce them better, then you're more than welcome to. Leptospirosis. It's a reproductive issues in horses and pigs, high fever, anemia, red urine, jaundice, septicemia in cattle and small ruminants. Foot rot. I've heard that. I'm not going to attempt to say the other, what the science or where it is. Opportunistic pathogen that can infect wounds on livestock. Botulism. Weakness may progress to paralysis, horses, cattle, and sheep. Oh, paralysis, not paralysis. Paralysis in horses, cattle, and sheep. E. coli, fever and diarrhea. Salmonella, fever, diarrhea, and lethargy, and it affects horses, cattle, and sheep. The next one can affect calves, sheep, and poultry. Cryptosporidium affects calves, causes diarrhea, weight loss. Giardia, diarrhea in small ruminants, cattle, horses, and more common in younger animals.
That's what they call beaver fever.
Flukes, impact weight gain and liver contaminations in affected cattle as slaughter, and it could cause great economic losses. Usually an issue with groundwater sources such as ponds that may be used by wildlife and be subject to high fecal contamination. Stagnant water sources, especially those with high nutrient loads, can develop algae blooms, which can be highly toxic to livestock. Additionally, stagnant water sources can provide habitat for mosquitoes, which can spread vector-borne disease such as West Nile virus. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
I think one comment here, and we may touch on it later, but all this things like this, it has to do with your carrying capacity. What does your watering system and your available water, how many animals can it really handle? It's partially that, as well as how you're getting that water to them. This might totally be fine if you're taking that, collecting the water and putting it in a tank, and so that it's not coming into contact with the ground and their fecal matter. But it's also there is something to be said for making sure that you have to make sure your animal units, your animal numbers are matched to the available water that you have for them and how you're introducing it. Because this situation obviously is, in this photo, is from too many animals overgrazing and waste going into the one spot. So that's something to think about in all your systems.
Excellent point. Next slide, please. Our last source of water are streams. Streams are rarely used as watering sources, but can be very reliable and more economical than installing a new well. Advantages: often the only source of water on remote sites. Disadvantages: most good springs have already been developed. Seeps are very difficult to judge in a stream. Environmental requirements make them not feasible in many cases. 25% of flow or no flow through systems require a fair amount of engineering experience, and especially an experienced contractor. Streams may go dry when water is needed the most. And make sure and check your local regulations regarding livestock access to streams. It's very important. Would Emmett, Bill, or Joe like to comment on this slide?
Seep and spring use and development is more common in drier areas, particularly here on the west side because of high density of people and habitat values and water quality issues. Those are considered critical areas, so they're pretty much all off limits. The same is increasingly true with streams. Just a few years ago, we're still recommending in-stream watering points to provide just a narrow area where livestock are allowed to water, and now the common guidance is to do those off-channel watering troughs and keep livestock out of streams.
And I would follow up a little bit on that, Emmett, too, is because we've tried those other methods for all those years, yet we still keep getting high fecal coliform numbers in a lot of streams. We can't figure out why, so it's sort of adaptive management. Okay, we tried that, it hasn't shown to be effective, so we got to go a little step further while still utilizing the water to water the livestock, but not allowing them direct access so they can, poop right into the stream is important. And another thing on the stream, we are seeing, like our 110 degrees weather 2 weeks ago, we're seeing changes in weather patterns. And so what in our lifetime or your parents, there might have been a stream that kept flowing, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to keep going in the future. So along with changes in the landscape, what used to recharge, maybe that seep or spring, now there's been development on a hill that no longer does that water soak into the ground and slowly run down the hill and come out at the bottom. There might be French drain ditches, roadways that now pirate that water away and take it away. So you're not getting ground recharge. So it's good to look beyond just your property and up on the hillside above you or around and seeing what changes have been made or what are going to be made depending on what's around you before you invest a lot of money in any one thing. A small investment's a good thing, but before you did too much, you'd want to sort of look at the world around you and see where's your safe zone, where's a smart investment, and how do I get some amount of water that matches what my goals are with my livestock.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on mute. Next slide, please. Watering facility and livestock watering. Emmett, would you like to talk about this? This is about you have your water, your source where the water where the animals are going to be drinking, and then this is talking about the area around that where they're going to congregate and make a muddy, or there's opportunity for them to make a muddy mess.
Yep. Yeah, great point. Thanks for this really good diagram here. So this is going to sound obvious when I describe each part, but it's sometimes a lot to think about when you're installing this. So not only do you want to have the right size trough with the right water source, you do need to think about an overflow there in the event that it's raining a lot or your float valve fails. You want to have the ability for that tank not to overflow right there, but to siphon that water off and divert it somewhere else. If you don't have the grade to have that outlet line come back above ground in daylight, then you can install a dispersion trench, which is a trench perpendicular to that line that has a drain pipe in it and rock so that the water that's in there can infiltrate into the ground. And if it can't, then it'll rise up through the crushed rock and surface again and flow through the pasture. You want to have your supply line protected. Animals can be pretty rough, especially on hot days if they're very thirsty. So make sure that you have that either backed up or on the other side of another fence, or somehow protected with a block or fencing there. If you crush your supply line, you could have water continuously flowing into that area, creating erosion and mud and wasting soil and animal health and money. So you want to avoid all of that. And then on the radius where the animals can access the water, it's really important to have some kind of protection area there. For a larger animal like cattle or swine in particular, having a concrete pad is really valuable. It may sound like a big hassle or expensive, but it's really worth it. I've seen a number of sites where people fail to do any kind of protection around the trough, and you have animals that are wallowing in mud in the spring or the fall, as deep as their chest, because they're always coming in at that same point trying to get access to that resource. So providing equal layer of crushed rock as your sub-base to your concrete pad is really important. There are other ways to do that too. You can use hoof grid or another polyethylene grid material to help hold rocks in place. You could use stall mats over some kind of gravel or something like that. The point is to make it hard and somewhat impervious so that the animals aren't able to dig a hole and create issues for you there.
Excellent.
Okay. I'll just add one other thing, and that great job, Emmett. I would say it just it really emphasize what you said about protecting the system too, however you do that, because whether they rub on it or if they're undermining the ground, your tank can get start sinking, or other things can happen that cause other failures. So it's worthwhile to try to install it sort of bulletproof the first time. And just a thought, if your water supply is out of a stream, your return flow outlet would just go back to the stream. That way, if there is something wrong, your water continues to stay in the stream and keep it flowing downstream. And so just one other thought there.
Perfect. Thank you. I would say as a planner, and probably Joe and Emmett, this is one of the, I see this, like, even when I'm not and have my planner hat on, you drive around, you see places where cattle are, or I haven't really seen horses, but cattle mostly. They'll be a landowner that's got a water and stuff, but they've had it there for 20 years. It's in the same exact spot it's been, and it looks like the cattle can barely get to it almost because that's so swamped up around. But anyway, that's just my observation. I don't know. Have you guys seen?
Yeah, that's a great observation, Jeff. You build a functioning system, and then animals may create a condition where they are no longer able to use it. So you want to be able to prevent against that.
And we've also, we've had people comment with concern that you've got them out of the animals out of the stream, but if you set this up 10 feet away from the same stream or ditch, and you have that situation where it's full of mud and manure, you're still allowing all those disease potential that you saw in the earlier slide. So we usually try to get a certain number of feet away, depending on the site. It's all site specific, slope, all that kind of stuff, but to at least set this up far enough away from the stream that you don't have that problem where whatever the situation is around it, it can still, but the bacteria still ends up getting in your water source.
Right. Perfect. Next slide, please. Okay. On this slide, Emmett, would you give us your input on this information?
Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit about off-channel watering systems, and that is the practice of taking water from the stream, piping it up to a trough away from the stream for your livestock. Just in the last year, Department of Ecology has decided to reinterpret their rules as you would need a water right to do that. I think that's something that's continuing to be negotiated. So just take caution if that's something that you are thinking about doing, and check in with your appropriate regulators.
Excellent. About Joe or Emmett, or Joe or Bill? All right, well, that concludes our pasture management with water sources. I will turn it back over to Emmett.
Okay, thanks everybody for attending. Just a reminder that Skagit Conservation District is non-regulatory, non-enforcement special purpose district. We only work with people who choose to work with us. So if you have any questions about the system, feel free to reach out to any of listed here, and we're happy to provide you free confidential technical assistance about your operation.
I have a question for you, Emmett, and or Jeff. How is there cost share money available to help somebody do these kind of a system, and who might provide that funding?
Yes, yeah, we talked about some numbers there that, can get expensive pretty quick, even on a small system. So that's something that if you think that you're interested in, work together to plan a system that works best for you, and submit applications for cost share at different sources locally, through the state, and also federally with our sister agency, the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And we can walk you through any of those different programs.
Is there like a match? Do I have to pay for a certain percentage, or how does that work?
Different programs have different guidelines and requirements. The Natural Resource Conservation Service provides a flat rate based on the metrics and the design of your system. So in cases that may cover the costs, and in others, it may leave you responsible for a large sum of that. Other cost share programs have different requirements. When we for funding through the Washington State Conservation Commission on your behalf, in Skagit County, we cover up to 75% of the cost of that, depending on if you are a commercial operation and the size and scope that we're looking at defining.
Thank you.
Yes, I was going to answer the question exactly like you did. Good job, Emmett.
Okay, well, I guess, and on our website, so people can go check our website out for the rest of the series of this 2021 pasture workshops. And so appreciate, and always call us up or email us if you have any additional questions.